Good afternoon and welcome to this virtual meeting of the Executive of Allerdale Borough Council. My name is Gail Roach, I'm the Democratic Services Manager, and for the purpose of today's meeting, I'm also the host, assisting the committee with the use of technology. We are currently live on YouTube and a recording will be made available afterwards on the Council's website. Shortly, I will hand you over to the Chair to formally start the meeting, but first some introductions. Can I ask everyone to introduce themselves, please, starting with the members. Councillor Cook.
Good afternoon, Councillor John Cook, Portfolio Holder for Leisure and Tourism.
Councillor Fitzgerald.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Marion Fitzgerald, the Portfolio Holder for Policy, Governance and People Resources.
Councillor Johnson.
Good afternoon. My name is Councillor Mike Johnson, Deputy Leader of the Council.
Councillor Lister.
Good afternoon, Councillor Lister.
Councillor Markley.
Good afternoon, Councillor Markley, Portfolio Holder for Environmental Services.
And Councillor Pitcher.
Good afternoon, Councillor Pitcher, Portfolio Holder for Customer Experience and Innovation.
Thank you. And now the officers, please. Catherine Nicholson.
Good afternoon, Catherine Nicholson, Chief Officer for Assets and Section 151 Officer.
Sharon Sewell.
Good afternoon, Sharon Sewell, Chief Officer for Governance and Place and Monitoring Officer.
Brendan Carlin.
Good afternoon, I'm Brendan Carlin. I'm Assistant Chief Executive for Innovation and Commercial.
Nick Hardy.
Good afternoon, I'm Nick Hardy. I'm the Assistant Chief Executive, Policy, Performance and Economic Strategy.
Kevin Kerrigan.
Good afternoon, Kevin Kerrigan, Programme Director for Workington.
Thank you everybody for your introductions. Can I please remind you to remain on mute throughout the meeting unless you're intending to speak. To intend to speak, can you use the raise hand icon and only speak when requested to by the Chair. I will now hand you over to the Chair to start the meeting. Thank you. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Gail. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Executive meeting today, Wednesday, the 24th of February, 2021. As previously stated, my name is Councillor Mike Johnson and I'm the Chair. You've been introduced to the members and officers in attendance today, so now moving on to the agenda. Item 1, the minutes. So we're to agree as a correct record the minutes of the meeting held on the 13th of January 2021. I will assume that all members are in agreement with the minutes unless they use the raise hand to indicate that they wish to speak. Can members please indicate now? Thank you. The minutes are approved. Moving on, item 2, apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies, please, Gail?
No apologies, Chair. Everybody's present.
Thank you. Item number 3, declaration of interests. Can attendees please use the raise hand function to indicate if you wish to make a declaration? If it becomes apparent during consideration of any of the items that you may have an interest, please declare it at that point. Councillor Pitcher.
Agenda item number 7, Chair. I am Honorary President of the Wigs and Baths Trust. I have no financial input into it, but slight interest in an item in the budget. Thanks.
Thank you. Moving on to item 4, questions. Do we have any questions, please?
No questions have been received, Chair.
Thank you, Gail. Item 5, members' announcements. Do any of the executive members have any announcements? There is no indication that there's any announcements, so we'll move on to item 6, quarter 3, finance report, April to December 2020. Councillor Lister, please.
Thank you, Chair. Pardon me. The report's on pages 7 to 24 with the appendixes from pages 25 to 42. So if we start in section 3, pages 7 and 8, and the report outlines a projected outturn position based on the actuals from April through to December of this financial year and the projections for the remaining 3 months. The report includes the reasons for significant variances and the impact on the council's resources. And the key messages from section 4, page 8, and that net revenue expenditure is forecast to exceed budget by £369,000. This position is forecast to be offset by an increase in income under the government's income guarantee scheme of £347k, resulting in a need to use £22,000 from general fund balances to finance the revenue budget. The projected underspend on earmarked reserve projects earmarked reserve project is £82,000, and this is largely reflecting changes in the anticipated timing of expenditure from reserves, where balances are expected to be spent in future financial years. It is expected there will be a saving of £2,000 after reprofiling of expenditure. A projected underspend of capital projects of £7.947 million after forecasting reprofiling of expenditure to subsequent financial years. There is an expected underspend of 341k. The revenue budget, sections 5 and 6, pages 9 to 13, and table 1 shows that the projected outturn will exceed budget by 369k, and table 2 provides a breakdown of the 369k variance by portfolio, and details of significant variances are provided in section 6. And the projects funded from earmarked reserves, which is section 7, pages 13 and 14, and the reserve balance held for service expenditure as at the 1st of April 2020 is £3.248 million. The budgeted use of earmarked reserves is £1.475 million, and the projected outturn is £1.393 million. This will result in an underspend of 82k. The forecast reprofiling to future years is 80k, resulting in a saving of 2k. Taxation and non-specific grant income, section 8, pages 14 to 16, and section 8 shows a summary of the council's taxation and non-specific grant income and expenditure for the year compared with budget. Based on forecast at Q3, it is anticipated that an additional £347,000 will be claimed under the government's income guarantee scheme due to the effects of the pandemic on sales, fees, charges and income. And the capital budget, section 9, page 17, capital budget monitoring shows a projected underspend of £7.945 million. And the reprofiling adjustments, change of timing of expenditure between financial years of £7.604 million. This leaves a remaining underspend of £341,000. Table 10 provides a breakdown by portfolio, and key variances in the capital programme are set out in section B. And the impact on general fund and earmark reserve balances, which is section 10, page 18, table 11 shows the impact of the budget monitoring projections on the council's reserves. Projections at Q3 show slightly less favourable position on the general fund than had been estimated during the budget setting process. The projected general fund balances available for use is 469k compared to the original projection of 484k. And the other financial functions, the remainder of the report, sections 11 to 13, contains an update on other financial functions of treasury management, section 11, page 19, and no new external borrowing has been undertaken during the quarter, and treasury management activities were carried out in accordance with treasury management and investment strategies. And insurance, section 12, page 20. The estimated cost of outstanding claims can be covered by the provision already set aside, and it's not expected that any additional resources will be required. And the sundry debtors, section 13, pages 20 to 21. Balance of debtors, that's money owed to the council, is shown in table 13. The debt over 90 days is higher than it was at the same time last year, that's 298k in December 2020, in comparison with 231k in December 2019. But in terms of the overall percentage of debt, this has actually decreased, it was 24% in December 2020 in comparison to 27% in December 2019. And creditors also see section 13. The authority's target is to pay 98% of supplier invoices within the target timeframe, 30 days for non-Allerdale suppliers and 14 days for Allerdale suppliers. And during Q3, 97.6% of Allerdale, non-Allerdale supplier invoices were paid within the 30-day timeframe, and 95.2% of the Allerdale supplier invoices within the 14-day timeframe. A summary of the reasons for delay in payment is set out on table 15. And council tax and NNDR collection statistics, paragraph 13.9, page 22. And during the 9 months to December, collection rates for council tax and NNDR were less than expected due to the effects of the coronavirus outbreak. The current combined collection rate is 84.12 compared to 84.75 as at the same date last year. And finally, the additional information is provided on the revenue and capital budgets within the appendices on page 25 to 42, as I mentioned at the very start. Okay, thank you. Oh, move the report.
Thanks very much for that, Jim. Once again, this finance report highlights the challenges that the council has faced in managing our finances during the pandemic. But it also highlights what a sterling job the various teams have done across the council in managing the budget. We must continue to be financially vigilant, as there are likely to be continued challenges for the remainder of this year. It's encouraging to see the various grants and funding provided by government in dealing with the pandemic, but the scale of the challenge is still a difficult one for us to manage. So well done to everybody. Do we have a seconder, or is anybody else wanting to comment on the finance report?
I'll second it. I'd also like to pass on compliments for all the hard work that's been done again. Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pitcher. So for the vote, I will assume that all members are in agreement with the motion unless they use the raise hand function to indicate that they wish to speak. Please indicate now. There are no indications, so thank you. The quarterly report is noted. So moving on to item 7, the budget of 2021 to 22, revenue and capital. Councillor Lister again, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to present the executive proposals for the 2021-22 revenue and capital budgets, and that's on pages 43 to 114. And these proposals include the revenue budget for 21-22 and the 3-year capital budget from 21-22 to 23-24. The report also includes the outcome of the budget consultation exercise and a report from the Chief Finance Officer on the robustness of the estimates and the adequacy of the reserves. The net budget requirement for 21-22, including parish precepts of 2.567 million, is proposed as £15,879,831. This represents an increase over the adjusted 2021 budget of £924,000. This is mainly attributable to one-off items required to address the impacts of COVID-19 on our rental income from economic development and from the need to set aside costs to deal with the need to restructure the council and prepare for the potential implications to arise from local government reorganisation. It does also allow for growth to address our priorities and for the recovery we will need as we hopefully emerge out of the global pandemic that has impacted us all so significantly over the past 12 months. And section 4, we undertook a consultation exercise between December and January. This summarised the financial challenges we face and steps being taken to bridge the financial gap that has arisen due to the unprecedented reductions in central government grants. The key messages from this exercise were that most respondents were in favour, with 9 out of 12 of the options presented, including using our land and buildings to generate income, making more efficient use of our assets, and sharing services with other councils and public agencies. And two, most respondents did not agree with either reducing the quality of the services or transferring our services to other organisations like commercial companies. And three, the majority, 60% of respondents, supported an increase in council tax of 5% a year on a Band D property. And section 5, national and local context, the conclusions of the one-year spending review 2020 were presented to Parliament on the 25th of November 2020. This prioritised funding across three key areas to support the government's response to COVID-19, investing in the UK's recovery for all regions of the UK, with particular emphasis on capital spending and delivering on promises to the British people, including cash increases to NHS spending, increasing schools budget, and additional police officers, and significant announcements, including in 2020 spending review, the direct relevance to local governments include an increase in revenue support grant in line with inflation, maintaining the existing new home bonus scheme for a further year with no new legacy payments, providing additional funding to local authorities to meet additional expenditure pressures because of COVID-19, providing additional grant to help local authorities support households that are least able to afford council tax payments, to compensate local authorities for 75% of irrecoverable loss of council tax and business rates revenues in 2021 that would otherwise need to be funded through local authority budgets, and providing additional funding for rough sleepers and those at risk of homelessness during COVID-19. Further key announcements relative to local authorities such as Allerdale are freezing the business rates multiplier for 21-22 and compensating local authorities, the implementation of changes to the PWLB's lending terms, meaning that the PWLB will no longer lend to local authorities that plan to buy commercial assets primarily for yield, and the introduction of a £4 billion levelling up fund to invest in local infrastructure projects, and causing pay increases within the public sector, apart from the NHS workers and those earning less than 24,000. To allow local authorities to focus on meeting the immediate public health challenges posed by the pandemic, it was announced that the proposed changes to business rates retention and the fair funding review would not be implemented in 21-22, and the government has announced that it will conduct a fundamental review of the business rate system and is currently considering responses to the call for evidence. We will have to await the outcomes of this and the impact it will have on us. And the local government finance settlement, the provisional local government finance settlement announced in December, and the final settlement released on the 4th of February 21. Settlement outlines the settlement funding assessment, the SFA, which compromises revenue support grant, retained business rates, income, and the government assessment of core spending power. And core spending power is the government's measure of the core component of local government funding, and comprises aggregate of the SFA, assumed income from council tax, new homes bonus, rural services delivery grant, and the new lower services grant. Nationally, the government figures indicate that core spending power will, in cash terms, increase by 4.5%. And importantly, this is based on the assumption that every council will raise their council tax by the maximum permitted, and that their growth in council tax base remains consistent with the last 5 years' growth. However, the figures for Allerdale indicate a reduction of 9.6%, and this is because our SFA has fallen by 2 million, and other grants receivable have fallen by 0.24 million, and this has only been offset by an increase in council tax income of 1.1 million. The revenue support grant has fallen by over 90% since 2015-16, whilst increases in baseline funding of business rates retention have typically only increased in line with inflation. The reductions of the RSG, which underpin the reduction in the settlement funding assessment, were originally timetabled to coincide with a planned transition to 100% rates retention in 2019-20. And this was paused in 2017 due to the snap election, which meant that changes to the primary legislation were not possible. In 2019-20, government announced its intention to move from 100% retention scheme to a 75% retention scheme in 2020-21. And this has been further delayed due, and we have no further update to date. And so section 6, resources available to support the revenue budget. And there are several resources available to fund the council's net revenue budget. And these are central government grants, business rates retention scheme, council tax, income from fees and charges, and interest and investment income. The main forms of central government support are from the Revenue Support Grant, Rural Service Delivery Grant, which is a grant in recognition of the extra cost of delivering public services in a sparsely populated area, New Homes Bonus Grant, Low Tier Services Grant, which is a new one-year grant, recognises the current exceptional circumstances of delivering our services during the pandemic. COVID Pressure Grant. This is an extension of the funding allocated to us to respond to the issues arising from the pandemic, and another new grant to deal with local council tax support, another help to economically vulnerable households during the pandemic. And the business rates income, under the current business rates retention scheme, 40% of business rates collected are retained by the council, with the remainder paid to central government, that's 50%, and the county council get 10%. A system of top-ups and tariffs ensures the council's share of estimated business rates income does not exceed the level of funding to be provided through the rates retention scheme. The estimate of business rates income available is based on an estimate made in January through a government return known as NNDR1. This also considers estimated losses due to appeals and expected collection rates. As part of the business rate scheme, council have the option of working with neighbouring authorities to seek formal designation as a pool, which is treated as a single authority for the purposes of certain calculations under the scheme. This provides the opportunity to increase the amount of growth in the local share retained locally. It also provides scope to manage the impact of volatility in the rates income across a wider area. For 2021-22, we, along with the 5 other district councils and the county council, have reached a collective decision to continue with the Cumbria pool. The net total income from business rates available to fund the budget next year is estimated to be 5.622 million. And council tax, the council could set any level of tax increase, but it must hold council tax referendum if this is to be above a certain limit. For 2021, the limit was set as previous years, i.e. district council can increase its council tax by up to 2% or up to including £5, whichever is the higher. This budget proposes that council tax is increased by £5 for a Band D property, and this is supported by most responses from the budget consultation exercise, which I mentioned earlier. We are currently aware that this is an additional burden on households, but as with all public services, the council is under pressure financially and needs to protect the vital services it provides, particularly those which are doing so much to support the community during the pandemic. For those households that are struggling to pay their council tax, we have a range of support on offer. And this includes our localised council tax support scheme, which provides 100% support to households on low incomes. In section 7, Allerdale's revenue budget. This council set out its approach to preparing this budget on the budget strategy report that was presented to executive back in November 2020. This budget has been developed during the middle of the worldwide pandemic, which is continuing to have significant impacts on service delivery and other finances. The key deliverables for next year are to prioritise delivery of the council's strategy and address the impacts of COVID-19 on our financial position. Details of the recurring and non-recurring bids are set out in the tables of the report. Support bids are those that best fit the council's aims and priorities, and those that provide some focus to our recovery as we aim to see the restrictions lifted and life start to return to some normality. In section 8, Allerdale's capital budget, the proposed capital budget is set out in section 8. Resources available to finance capital expenditure come from grants and contributions from third parties, capital receipts from sales and assets, direct funding from revenue, and borrowing requirement. The capital programme is mainly focused around the delivery of the Maryport Future High Streets Fund and the anticipated announcement regarding the Workington Town Investment Plan. Section 9 is the budget assurance statement from the Chief Financial Officer. This section is required under the S25, the Local Government Act 2003, and places a duty on the CFO to make a report on the robustness of the budget estimates and the adequacy of the council reserves. This report acknowledges the difficult circumstances that these estimates have been developed during and that the impacts are likely to be felt for some time to come. However, the CFO's view is that the budget proposals do represent the most accurate position available at the time, and a robust process has been followed in producing the estimates. The report also sets out the importance, particularly in these difficult times, of maintaining adequate levels of reserves, and these provide a cushion to deal with unknown and unforeseen events. The budget for 21-22 needs to draw on general fund reserves, and the medium-term position indicates that there will be a budget deficit between a budget deficit position in 2022 and 2023. Without successful plans to address this deficit, there will be a need to draw on reserves, and these will fall below the minimum balance by the end of 2023 and be fully utilised the following year. So to conclude, it's likely that in the current circumstances, next year is likely to be another unusual financial year, and that is short term in its outlook. Our key focus over the next 12 months will be to manage the impact of COVID that COVID has had and will continue to have on our finances, and ensure that we build this understanding into our future projection. The economic regeneration and place shaping around our key towns, villages and businesses will be key to how we recover from the ongoing restrictions. This will ensure that the council is organised and ready to meet the challenges that lie ahead. I move the recommendations of the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. You deserve a well-deserved drink. I'd like to thank everyone for the work done to produce this balanced budget. This has been an extraordinary year for everyone. Our financial team have coped with the impact of the pandemic on our income and expenditure, as well as helping to administer the business grant scheme and pay out millions of pounds to support local businesses. I'd also like to thank those of you who took the time to respond to the consultation. As an administration, we are genuinely keen to engage with our local community in these discussions and decisions. We must ensure that we spend public money as effectively and efficiently as possible. And so I agree with many of the respondents who said that we should look for efficiencies within our services and make the most effective use of our buildings and assets. This is something I am pleased to say that we have prioritised in our long-term council strategy. We will also seek to work more effectively with our partners, which I also note was a key priority for many. I know that many will focus on the proposals to raise council tax in our budget. Our proposed £5 a year increase for a Band D property equates to just under 10 pence per week. The rise for lower bands is even less. With this, we can continue to provide the services and investment that our communities expect. It also means we can continue to help our most vulnerable residents, as well as support local businesses. I recognise that many people are struggling financially with the ongoing pandemic, which is why I would encourage those experiencing difficulty to check their eligibility for available schemes and speak to the council if they require assistance. But our budget is also about investment in our communities. It includes capital money for much needed housing in Keswick, and investment into Maryport through the Future High Street initiative. I'm really pleased that the money we are receiving from government will be going towards the major projects under the scheme, such as the creation of a new covered market, redevelopment of key buildings such as the former Carlton Cinema and Christchurch, as well as redevelopment of the Wave Centre. And if all goes well, we'll be able to see similar types of developments in Workington too over the coming years with the Workington Towns Fund bid. We acknowledge that budgeting is just that little bit harder for everyone at the moment, whether it be the business community, individual households, or even the council. But we firmly believe that if we invest in our council strategy, then we can expedite our recovery from the pandemic. This budget lays the foundations for this council to play our part in that recovery. Thank you. Do any of Councillor Fitzgerald?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think these budget proposals for 2021 to 22, they don't reflect the happiest of scenarios. I think we all know that, and that was never going to be the case because of the pressures of the COVID-19 pandemic, and also the fact that we had to launch a local authority owned trading company at the very start of the pandemic in the form of Allerdale Waste Services, which has gone on to enjoy great success despite the most difficult of circumstances. But I think we need to be mindful of the fact that there are other local authorities which are really finding themselves in a desperate situation at the moment. And I think that the officers on this council deserve our thanks and our appreciation for all their very hard work in what's been such a difficult year. And all of that hard work, it has contributed to our being in a position where we can put forward these sensible and robust proposals, realistic proposals for 2021-22. And I would particularly like to extend my thanks to the Section 151 officer and her team. And I'm happy to second the proposals. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Marion. Councillor Markley.
Thank you, Chair. I would just like to give my thanks to the officers for a sterling job that they've done to continue delivering services and have sufficient funds left to invest into future projects during these challenging times for our residents. Keeping the amount of council tax down to that figure has been really challenging, and it's a credit to the team to be able to do that. So I'd just like to pop my thanks into that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tony. So we've heard the report from Councillor Lister. Councillor Fitzgerald has seconded that report. So we'll move on to the vote. I will assume that all members are in agreement with the motion, unless they indicate that they wish to speak. Please indicate now. There were no indications. The motion is approved. So we'll move on to item 8, Capital Investment Strategy 2021 to 2022. Councillor Lister, please.
Thank you, Chair. This capital investment strategy is a key document for the council. The ownership of the strategy sits at the highest level corporately with members and officers. It is a primary document intended for use by all stakeholders to show how the council makes decisions on capital investment. It sets out the council's ambitions in the short, medium and long term. And our aim for this council is to make sustainable improvements to the long-term quality of life of our residents via our priorities set out in our council strategy. The continuing reductions in government funding are impacting on already limited financial resources and make this strategy an essential tool for the council to focus its capital resources on results that deliver the maximum benefit to residents. We recognise that financial resources are constrained, and therefore we must ensure commitment to the affordability of capital investment decisions over the longer term. Driving growth is critical to maintaining and creating good quality jobs for people, in turn helping to reduce poverty and create a sustainable economy for the future. The Council Capital Programme is the delivery plan for this strategy and is underpinned by the borrowing strategy contained in the approved Treasury Management Strategy. I move the recommendation that the Capital Investment Strategy is approved. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Jim. I'm pleased to be able to lend my support to the to this capital strategy. Our capital programme will play a key role in ensuring that we make the right investments into the right areas, whilst making sure we live in within our means as this council. Our capital investment generates significant impact for our local communities and this council. This implementation of this strategy will help unlock schemes that will have a significant local economic impact. I have already mentioned the regeneration programmes, but there will also be a continued social impact with investments such as the conversion of the Otley Road properties in Keswick. Our capital programme for the coming year is extensive. It is wide-ranging, and I look forward to monitoring what I hope will be a significant impact for our community. Any other comments, or do we have a seconder to move this motion on? Councillor Markley, thank you.
Happy to second it, Chair.
Thank you. I will assume that all members are in agreement with the motion unless they indicate that they wish to speak. Please indicate now. There were no indications. The motion is approved. So we'll move on to the Q3 performance report 2020 to 21. Councillor Fitzgerald, please.
Thank you, Chair. In line with the Council's performance management framework, the Executive and Overview and Scrutiny Committees receive quarterly performance reports based on the Council's strategy. The Q3 corporate performance report for 2020 to 21 covers the period from the 1st of October to the 31st of December 2020 and focuses on the key actions and performance indicators set out in the Interim Delivery Plan 2020 to 21. The Interim Delivery Plan 2020 to 21 sets out a series of actions and indicators relating to how the Council will deliver against the 6 priority themes in the Council strategy for 2020 to 2030 over the coming year. The Corporate Performance Report is attached as Appendix A in your agenda and contains details of progress on key actions, details of performance on key performance indicators. The Corporate Performance Report is set out following the 6 priority themes in the Council strategy for 2020 to 2030, which are a financially secure council, a cleaner, greener Allerdale, invest to grow, outstanding local services, thriving towns and villages, and resilient communities. The report at Appendix A shows that despite the continuing challenging times, progress on activities is good overall, with 34 of the 39 key actions being green and 4 amber. 14 of the 24 indicators attributed an amber, red, green rating were green, on target, 7 are amber, which are close to target, and 3 are red, which is off target. The majority of projects and activities set out in the interim delivery plan are on track. There continues to be a significant amount of work across the organisation relating to the pandemic situation, such as undertaking advisory and enforcement work around safe practices in local businesses, continued delivery with the County Council of the local test and trace system, paying out another wave of grants to businesses since November, administering test and trace payments for individuals, and working with the visitor sector to develop recovery plans. At the same time, day-to-day services continue to run smoothly. Alongside this, our key regeneration schemes in Workington and Maryport have moved forward, with a significant milestone reached for Maryport through the confirmation of an offer of £11.5 million funding through the Future High Streets Fund. There are 24 performance indicators with an amber, red, green rating reporting in Q3, of which 58% were green, which is on or better than target, 29% were amber, close to target, and 13% were red, which is off target. There are 3 indicators reporting as off target for Q3. The percentage of council spend of less than £50,000 on goods and services with local Cumbrian suppliers, and the percentage of all council spend on goods and services with local Cumbrian suppliers. These are both red for Q3. The drop since Q2 across both indicators results from a number of large payments on capital projects. Although some of these suppliers are from outside the area, they did subcontract to local suppliers in accordance with our procurement requirements. However, subcontractor data is not currently identifiable, so officers are working to build more data integration reporting into the new finance system. The latest available data for residual household waste collected per household is for Q2, as there is a time lag in verifying this data. The Q2 performance was below target at 144 kilograms against a target of 129 kilograms. This, however, is an improvement on the Q1 position, and the associated key performance indicator for recycling rates shows a clear improvement between Q1 and 2 above target, which is positive news. We've also seen an improving trend in the percentage of bins collected on scheduled collection day, taking this to target levels now, which is again good news. The pandemic situation has had a significant impact on a number of council services, making target setting in some cases very difficult. In these cases, we are not attributing a red, amber or green performance rating, but will be tracking trends in performance and comparing to previous years where appropriate, rather than measuring against a fixed target figure. The ongoing pandemic situation has also meant that there was an impact on data available for certain indicators for Q3, for example, for leisure centre usage, as centres closed again in November 2020. So I now move the recommendation that the information contained within the Q3 Performance Report 2020 to 21 be noted by members with a view to seeking continuous improvement in performance. Thank you.
Thank you, Marion. Yet again, this quarterly report highlights the good performance from the team here in Allerdale. Close to 90% of our projects and activities set out in our delivery plan are shown that we're on track. This is an impressive achievement given the backdrop of our response to the coronavirus pandemic, which has added to the demands placed upon us, not least in advising businesses on how to comply with the restrictions, as well as providing the financial support grants, which I know are so welcome. I'd like to commend everyone who has worked so hard to achieve this, and it reflects our commitment to serve and support our communities, and so what we can improve the lives of our residents. I have mentioned this before, but perhaps one milestone for me in Q3 was the announcement of the 11.5 million funding for Maryport. I know a lot of work has been ongoing since I received the announcement on Boxing Day, and I hope the work will be able to begin on the projects in the town as soon as possible. And who knows, again, as I've already mentioned earlier in the meeting, hopefully we can soon celebrate a similar achievement for Workington in the not too distant future. So, do we have a seconder for this motion? Councillor Markley, thank you. Again, for the vote, I will assume that all members are in agreement with the motion unless they indicate that they wish to speak. Please indicate now. There were no indications. The quarterly report is noted. So moving on to item 10, Cumbria Coastal Strategy. We now have colleagues joining us from Cumbria County Council for this item, so I will pause a while we bring them into the meeting. Lee, can you confirm once our guests are in the meeting, please?
Yeah, Chair, they're just loading up now, they're just connecting now. Doug Coyle's on the meeting now, Chair, and we're just waiting on Anthony Lane.
Lee. Just wait for Anthony to load up. It must be a long way away then, Doug, is Anthony?
Actually, lives in Scotland, so you could say it's a little bit away. He's just across the border, though.
Are you happy to proceed, Doug, whilst Anthony continues to try to connect? You're just muted at the moment, Doug.
Yeah, I'm happy.
Right. So we've got Doug Coyle from the County Council and obviously Anthony Lane he's now with us. Would you two gentlemen like to introduce yourselves? And then I'll hand over to Tony Markley, who will then bring you in to deliver your report.
Okay. So my name is Doug Coyle. I'm the manager for Flood and Development Management. The section I look after is responsible for what is called the Lead Local Flood Authority aspect, which involves looking at flooding across Cumbria. Another part of our work is actually an overview of what happens on the coast, and that's an aspect that's driven under the Flood and Water Management Act by us to look at legally. So in that response, we are orchestrated us getting together with the other 4 districts to look at concerns on the coast and to look at how we address looking at what is called the Shoreline Management Plan, which Anthony will talk a little bit more about now. Okay.
Thanks, Doug. If you just introduce yourself, Anthony, please, and then I'll hand over to Councillor Markley.
Hello, everyone. Yes, I'm Anthony Lane. I'm an engineer in Doug's team at the County Council. We were both involved in initiating the Cumbria Coastal Strategy a few years ago. We've worked closely with Jacobs over the last 3 years, quite intensely developing the strategy. It was completed last summer. and has received detailed approvals from the Environment Agency and the Secretary of State for one element of the Habitat to Regs assessment within the strategy documents. That was at the end of last year. We've been taking forward the strategy through all of there's 5 coastal protection authorities, the district councils in Cumbria that have responsibilities with us for delivering a significant number of schemes and actions from the strategy over the coming years, and it's my responsibility to project manage all of that work. Doug mentioned the shoreline management plan. That is a high-level policy document that covers the coastline. Each section of the English coastline has a shoreline management plan, and our strategy has had to align to all of the policies that are set out within that document, and that's led by the Environment Agency predominantly. So we've got a significant amount of work here from the strategy, and some good pathway for investment in our coastline in the future.
Thank you, Anthony. Councillor Markley, would you like to introduce this report, please?
Thank you, Chairman. The requirement for a coastal strategy follows several years of extreme weather events and ongoing natural erosion along the Cumbrian coastline. In May 2017, Cumbria County Council, along with the local districts and Environment Agency, commissioned Jacobs to carry out various studies and surveys along the Cumbrian coastline to provide a detailed plan of works required currently and in the future to protect the coastline. Public consultations were held in December 2018 and again in December 2020. The Cumbrian Coastal Strategy is to form the basis of a coastal protection works for the next 100 years. The strategy and its action plan will guide the best approach to future management of this coastline. Cumbria County Council, the District Council and the Environment Agency will all have a lead role in ensuring delivery of this strategy. In parallel to this, a draft compensatory habitat creation plan has been developed, which is required to offset impacts on designated sites. Once the strategy is approved by Coastal Protection Authority partners, of which Allerdale is one, it will be taken to the Cumbria County Council's Cabinet for approval. Once approved, the funding is secured from the EA. County will work in partnership with the relevant authorities to begin delivery of the recommended infrastructure schemes. In total, £149.5 million of identified schemes have been identified. I welcome this extremely important document and move to endorse the strategy. Thank you, Chairman.
I nearly unmuted Catherine there, because as I went to unmute myself, the screen moved itself around like celebrity squares. Thank you for that, Tony. Councillor Cook.
Yes, thank you for that. Thank you, Tony. I welcome this report. I'd just like to reiterate that there is an urgency on this matter. There's plenty of areas down the coast that are in a fragile state at the moment, and I think this is a good start for us to able to protect the population as well as the road up and down the coast. So I would like to second Tony Markley's report.
Thank you, John. Does anybody have any further questions I would ask to ask the County Council officers that are here today? Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thanks, Chair. No, I haven't any questions, but I would like to thank Doug and Anthony for the presentation they gave to members earlier this week, because a number of concerns were raised and were addressed at that meeting. For example, the risk of habitat loss with some of the schemes that are part of the strategy. And I think there were assurances given that every effort will be made to restore biodiversity wherever possible, and to make improvements on adjacent sites where it isn't possible, so that there isn't any net loss. So that was very reassuring. There were also some questions asked about particular parts of the strategy, particularly Mary Port Harbour and Harrington Harbour, and thank you very much for the information you gave on those. We know that each individual part of this scheme carries a very large price tag with it, and I think the important thing to bear in mind is that we need this strategy in order to be prepared to put forward bids when the opportunities arise. So yeah, I'm very happy to support this strategy. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Marion. I would just like to add that as an area, we often forget quite how extensive our coastline is and the important role that it plays in Allerdale. The strategy will play a central role in the challenge of coastal erosion. It's not something that we can ignore, and therefore I welcome the investment that will be guided by this strategy. It will provide the area with a clear focus and prioritise schemes that will ensure that we continue to support our coastal communities, and our coastline is something that we can all continue to enjoy. I have no hesitation, therefore, in endorsing this strategy. Councillor Pitcher.
I'd like to endorse the strategy too. I can't say strategy. I think it's a start. It's a good start. We need a starting point. So anybody that is watching and has any doubts need not be worried, because we have to start somewhere, and this is a good place to start. And at least we have money that is there to be invested, and people are prepared to plan things out and do things properly. I think this is a good move. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. So we've had it moved and we've had it seconded by Marion. So for the vote, I will assume that all members are in agreement with the motion. Unless they indicate they wish to speak, please indicate now. There are no indications. The motion is approved. So I would just like to thank Anthony Lane and Doug Coyle from the County Council. Very much appreciated. Thank you very much for coming along to us today and for the previous presentations that you've made to members in Allerdale Borough Council. We'll just pause the meeting while you exit and continue with your normal day jobs. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks very much. Just like to say we look forward to working with members in the coming months. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Right, we'll move on to item 11, Resilient Community Strategy. Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Chair. One of the themes within our 10-year council strategy is resilient communities. We stated our intention in this year's interim delivery plan to develop a resilient community strategy to underpin that council strategy theme, and to set out how we can support our communities across the district. The draft Resilient Community Strategy is presented for consideration at Appendix A to this report. Given the ongoing pandemic situation, this strategy takes on particular importance in terms of setting out our approach to supporting and helping our communities. The Resilient Communities Strategy considers both shorter-term approaches to supporting communities through the ongoing restrictions and into recovery, as well as looking at longer-term approaches that will help strengthen our communities. As a council, we have recognised the complexities of building resilience. We understand that we are just part of the picture and that we will need to work collaboratively with communities and with other organisations in this field. The draft strategy suggests that we can help to create the conditions that enable resilience by acting in some key areas, a series of building blocks, if you like, that can help make communities more resilient and that should help to strengthen our communities. The areas of focus identified in the draft Resilient Community Strategy are engaging, involving and collaborating and empowering our communities, promoting healthy, active lifestyles, addressing community safety issues, and addressing inequalities and hardship. I'll speak a little bit about each of those things. So engaging, involving, collaborating, and empowering communities. This area reflects research that shows that involving and empowering communities can help to build resilience and recognise that as an organisation, we could do more to engage with our communities. Approaches suggested here include finding different ways to have conversations with residents about their communities, our policies and the services we deliver, as well as developing more informal ongoing dialogue with communities and partner organisations about priorities and approaches. Promoting healthy, active lifestyles. This reflects our local context and the poorer health outcomes we see in many of our communities, which in turn affects their resilience. Active lifestyles are recognised as essential to good health, both physical and mental. Participation in sport, leisure, cultural and recreational activities has also been shown to help strengthen community resilience by raising confidence, encouraging community unity, and encouraging volunteering and skills development. Approaches here include helping to make sure there are good quality places and spaces, both formal and informal, for people to participate in recreational activity, encouraging participation in formal and informal activity, and working through key partnerships such as the Allerdale Health and Wellbeing Forum on wider health and wellbeing issues. Addressing community safety issues. This reflects the fact that how safe, accessible and welcoming our neighbourhoods, community places and community spaces feel can influence habits and behaviours. The COVID-19 pandemic has highlighted the importance of outdoor space to meet and exercise, and whilst we know that overall Allerdale is a safe place to live and that environmental quality is generally very good, we also know there are some communities where people do not feel that this is the case. Approaches here include continuing to work through the Allerdale Local Focus Hub and the Community Safety Partnership to take a multi-agency approach to tackling community safety issues, as well as encouraging people to get involved in taking care of their local environment through activities such as community cleanup activities. Addressing inequalities and hardship. We know from research that a community's ability to recover from events like the current pandemic and to adapt to longer-term change is undermined by poverty and deprivation. The suggested approach here is twofold: supporting those already experiencing poverty and inequality by alleviating immediate short-term issues, and focusing on the longer-term issues that improve resilience and prospects. In the shorter term, that includes supporting people through our homelessness services and delivering existing benefits and COVID-related schemes as effectively as possible. In the longer term, the proposed approach includes working with partners to take joint action on wider social and economic factors and identify longer-term solutions to inequalities. My thanks go to everyone who has contributed to the Resilient Communities strategy, including a range of partners and councillors who've all fed in very useful comments as the strategy has been developed. If the strategy is approved today, there is then more work to do to develop a series of delivery plans to set out in more detail how we can work towards the objectives written within the strategy. So I now move the recommendation that the draft Resilient Community Strategy be approved by members today. Thank you.
Thank you, Marion. First of all, I would particularly like to thank Alex Fitzgerald and Helen Sant, Allerdale officers, who have worked incredibly hard in pulling this document together in the most difficult of circumstances. This strategy has been in development and has been a gap in the strategic framework of the council for some time. It comes before us today, however, at exactly the time that it is needed most. Our communities are resilient, but they have experienced real difficulties over the past 12 months, and they are likely to experience difficulties over the coming 12 months at least. This strategy aims to support those who need it most and those who are experiencing real hardship and those who need a helping hand. We recognise that we can't solve all of these issues on our own, which is why we acknowledge that we need to collaborate and engage with others. We are also acutely aware that the health of our community is of a paramount importance right now, and we will seek to do all that we can to ensure that our communities are able to lead an active lifestyle as restrictions ease. I don't think when we first envisioned this strategy that we realised quite what an important document that it would become, not only for the council, but for the area. Councillor Pitcher.
Thanks, Chair. I'd like to second Marion's motion, if I can, please, and also thank the various agencies that contribute to the work that's put into this report. There are numerous agencies that you never get to hear about, and also I'd like to, alongside Helen and Alex, put a word in for Emma Thompson, who seems to be working night and day to keep things ticking over and is constantly keeping members up to date with where we are with these resilient community plans. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Alan. So we've had it proposed and seconded. So for the vote, I will assume all members are in agreement with the motion unless they indicate that they wish to speak. Please indicate now. There are no indications. The motion is approved. So moving on to item 12, Workington Town Centre Supplementary Planning Document. Again, Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Chair. In October last year, Executive approved the publication of the draft Workington Town Centre Supplementary Planning Document for public consultation. The consultation ran from the 14th of October to the 4th of December. 17 responses were received from local residents and businesses, and a summary of their comments can be found in Appendix 2 of the report. The SPD has been amended where possible to take account of these comments, and the amended SPD is set out in Appendix 1. The role and nature of town centres has been changing over the last few years with the closure of many retailers and the growth of online shopping. This trend has accelerated rapidly due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The supplementary planning document provides more detailed planning guidance to enable Workington Town Centre to successfully adapt and to prosper. In particular, the SPD provides further guidance to support the implementation of the policies and site allocations contained in the local plan, parts 1 and 2, and the delivery of the Workington Investment Plan and Towns Fund bid. The Workington Town Centre SPD focuses on land and premises contained within the town centre boundary as defined in the local plan. It recognises the importance of delivering well-designed, accessible open spaces that are connected by a safe and high-quality network of pedestrian and cycling routes. To help achieve this, the SPD provides guidance on design, green infrastructure, and public realm, as well as improvements to pedestrian and cycling links within the town centre. Increasing vacancies in the high street will make the repurposing and reuse of empty properties even more important. The SPD is supportive of repurposing buildings that can introduce uses such as housing and business space, as well as expanding the town's retail, leisure and cultural offer. Guidance is also provided for key development sites in the town centre. It is now proposed to adopt the Workington Town Centre Supplementary Planning Document as council policy. Once adopted, this SPD will become a material planning consideration when determining development proposals in Workington Town Centre. I therefore move the recommendation that the Workington Town Centre Supplementary Planning Document, as set out in Appendix 1 of this report, is adopted. Thank you.
Thank you, Marion. I am happy to support the adoption of this policy today. Workington, and in particular Workington Town Centre, plays an important role for the whole of West Cumbria. The town faces many significant challenges. However, we have an important role to play in meeting the challenges of an ever-changing high street. This document will assist us in meeting those challenges by supporting the implementation of the local plan and, of course, further regeneration of the town. It provides the additional level of guidance that we expect on a number of issues that will become increasingly important to us as the town centre continues to evolve over the coming years. Do we have a seconder, please? Councillor Markley, thank you. For the vote, I will assume that all members are in agreement with the motion unless they indicate that they wish to speak. Please indicate now. There were no indications. The motion is approved. Moving on to item 13, Scrap Metal Dealers Act. Councillor Lister.
Thank you, Chair. Scrap Metal Dealers Act. And there are two purposes of this report to the executive. One is to explain the review of the licensing fees and charges, and the other is to update the delegations for the scrap metal function. The review of the fees and charges is to enable the council to recover the reasonable costs in processing and determining applications and ensuring compliance with the appropriate legislation and the conditions of the licence. The regime has a costs recovery basis. Therefore, the aim is not to generate further income, as this is not permitted, but to ensure accuracy in accordance with the principle of cost recovery. The principle of cost recovery under licensing legislation is not limited to the licensing of scrap metal. Other functions are hackney carriages and private hire vehicles, operators and drivers, sex establishments, and some Gambling Act 2005 licenses. Scrap metal is an executive function, and the remainder will be determined by Council on the 3rd of March 2021. Three elements make up the licensing fees: the administration costs of investigating the background and suitability of applicants for licenses, the cost of monitoring the compliance of these those with licenses with their terms, and the cost of enforcing the licensing regime against unlicensed operators. The fees have not been reviewed for a number of years, which it's legislation dependent, and therefore, following training, a comprehensive review of the licensing service was carried out, which has been ongoing for around 2 years. Processes have been streamlined and timed out, recording the time taken to complete each step. Considering the work of all relevant officers and members, the proposed fees are at paragraph 6.2.10 of the report. The Act came into force in 2013, and the delegations to officers and the portfolio holder as they were then are no longer relevant and require updating. These are contained in the recommendations 6.3.16a to E. And there's an amendment to the report, as there is an omission in the report at recommendation 2.1. Revised fees need to be effective from the 1st of April 2021 to tie in with the new financial year. I therefore move the recommendations as follows. 2.1, to set the fees in accordance with paragraph 6.2.10 with effect of the 1st of April 2020, and 2.2, approve the delegations in accordance with paragraph 6.3.16a to E with effect from the 24th of February 2021. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Would anybody like to speak on this or second this motion, please? Councillor Fitzgerald, thank you very much. So for the vote, I will assume that all members are in agreement with the motion unless they indicate they wish to speak. Please indicate now, please. There were no indication. The motion is approved. So this is the end of the meeting as we've reached the end of the agenda items. Thank you for your attendance. The next virtual meeting of the executive will be 4 p.m. on Wednesday, the 24th of March, 2021. I now formally close this meeting.